Hey, Mr. Pond.
Hey, it's that time of day. It's Wednesday.
To make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk coming at you live from the Queen's pickup truck. As I'm sure you know, everywhere I go, there's a story. And if I got some stories for you today, but last Wednesday, I got called to get myself to Running River Ranch outside of Brenham, Texas, Washington on the Brazos area. For you that know that, I see Wyatt and Josie checking in. Wednesday night, date night for Josie. And man, have I got some stories to tell. Now, we are going to talk about ponds, but holy cow, have I got some stuff to tell you. I'm actually in Debbie's car. I don't have a copy of Pond Boss magazine. I don't have a hat. I don't have a mug, but we're going to do this anyway. You guys know the drill. Let's see, I see Ashton Hunter. Haven't met Ashton yet. Troy Todd, good to see you again, brother. But you guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss magazine in the comments section. Click like, share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing, which we'll do next week. Leanne will do that for me. For a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss mug. And I'm going to toss in a fish poster if I remember to tell her, which I think I will. So, heck, I don't know what that's worth. Probably $30 or so. So, anyway, if you'll do those things so we can kind of get our audience moving. There's Devin Thompson checking in from Hawaii. Josie's out in California. Well, that's cool. We cover some of the west part of the United States of New America. So, I've had an eventful few days. Good gosh. It started off with the call to get my butt down here because Kat thought she might go into labor last Wednesday, so I hoofed it down here to Running River Ranch. Well, she didn't go in labor until Monday, but now we have a 2-day-old, 8-pound, 9 ounces, little Charlotte Catherine Lusk. She's about 20 inches long. If she were a bass, she'd weigh about 6 pounds, but she's a human. She weighs 8 pounds, 9 ounces at 20 inches. So we're thrilled to death. Debbie's over there hanging out right now with that little baby doll, and the family's celebrating her birthday, her 0 birthday. So that's pretty cool. Thank you very much, Mr. Epting. John Funk, good to see you. The other couple of things, if you guys, I don't know if you're kind of interested in some of the stuff that happens, but I got a hair in my eye. But last Thursday, our good friends Bucky and Mary Lanehart were coming down from upstate New York, going to stay in a bed and breakfast just about 6 or 7 miles from here. And I decided, and they were coming down. I want to tell you about this too. I do want to tell you about this. They, Bucky and Mary and Debbie and I went to the groundbreaking ceremony for Heroes Ranch. I want you guys to check out Heroes Ranch. Freeman Sawyer, he comes on this show quite often and watches what's going on. I want to give a shout out to him. He's a brand new sponsor, but even more importantly is the fact that he is building a facility that is just completely zeroed in on providing hunting and fishing opportunities for disabled combat veterans and first responders and Gold Star families. And he's been talking about it for 5 or 6 years. I've looked at, I think, 6 ranches with him. He found the ranch he wanted last year, and now he's doing it. And he's had this vision for a long, long, long time. He and his wife, Susan, and I'm so proud of him because there were probably 350 people there Saturday to enjoy the groundbreaking and listen to some inspirational speakers and see the opportunity. So check out Heroes Ranch in Quitman, Texas. He's a sponsor now, and which I am so thrilled that I can talk about him. And I'll write about it in Pond Boss, probably in the November-December issue, but anyway, Bucky and Mary came to town, so they were coming. They went from New York to Cody, Wyoming to look at some things there. Cody, Wyoming to Dallas, Fort Worth, and then drive here. Well, their connection didn't work coming from Cody to Denver, so they lost about 6 or 7 hours and got into town a little bit late. So I said, you know what? I want to get them some Texas barbecue. So I headed to Chapel Hill and get them some barbecue. And just as I turned on the road going down there about 10 after 8 Thursday night, I see a Jeep coming at me, go off the road, veers off the road, overcorrects, comes back across, and then flips the Jeep. Now, if you want to read any about this, I wrote about this story. I even took a few pictures. I hope they're tasteful. But I put that on my Facebook page, and it was pretty traumatic. But the good news is This guy was only in the hospital a couple of days, and I never would have thought that. So then we went to the groundbreaking ceremony, came back, spent some valuable time together, and now we're hunkered down a little bit. Here's the other thing I was going to tell you. So we're taking care of those two big brothers, 6 and 3.75 age group, age class. Relative weight's about 100. Some of y'all are laughing at that, I know. And anyway, we went to pick them up from school. I forgot that I was in my diesel truck, pulled into the gas pumps, and filled it full of gasoline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of leave you with that. The truck went into the shop by wrecker last night. I did drive it 3 miles. It started sputtering, and then it was done. Done. So I want you to guess how much it's going to cost to fix it. Now, any mechanics out there? You guys may know, you may not. So let's talk about some fish ponds. Mark Dyer sent a report to me. He lives on I guess it's a sand pit lake in eastern Nebraska. Now, it's a homeowners association, and he was a little bit concerned about, the fishery, and he was worried about the visibility of the water last year. Well, again, coached him and encouraged him to send a water sample in. As a matter of fact, I talked about how to collect a water sample several shows ago, and mainly because Mark wanted to know how to collect a sample. So he collected a sample, sent it to our good buddy Bill Cody in Melinta, Ohio, who's a marine biologist, microbiologist, and you got to preserve the sample to make sure all the cells are intact. And what he found out, Bill Cody sent the response back, the report, and they had 1.5 million algae per milliliter of water. 98% of those were cyanobacteria, of which 67% of those are toxic. So he wants to know what to do about that blue-green algae. So even though I think last time we got together, I talked a little bit about blue-green algae, Jimmy Mitchell, he doesn't know. Don't ask me how I know that. Well, I'm thrilled to death that I'm not the only guy that's ever done that. Well, going back to that, I did call a diesel mechanic. I took it to a dealership here where we are, or the wrecker did. And so while I was waiting for them to call me and tell me the really bad news, I called a diesel mechanic that I was referred to. He said, well, Bob, don't be surprised if they tell you that you got to replace your entire fuel system. Fuel pump, injectors, the lines, all of it. And I said, okay, what's that cost? He says, $10,000. Well, I was hoping to kind of get by on $3,000, maybe $2,500. I'm glad to know Jimmy Mitchell's was only $1,500, but guess what? I guess with these newer engines, they've got enough brains to shut down before it gets so bad. $600. $600. I am so happy to know that I spent $100 on gasoline to put in my diesel truck. It's going to cost me $600 to undo that stupid mistake. So I'm pretty happy about that. Let's go back to blue-green algae. I'm not that happy about it, but $600 compared to a fuel system. I was probably going to trade it in on a Volkswagen or maybe like the Flintstones little pedal car or something. So Mark Dyer was in his message with the low visibility and the bright green color of that water. One of his questions is that concentration of blue-green algae toxic? Yes, it is. Now, it's not toxic as long as that blue-green algae is alive. Now, is it, you get a rainfall or a temperature drop or something that kills that cyanobacteria, then what happens is it dies, and when it dies, then the cells begin to break down and they float. And it looks like green paint or blue-green paint floating on top of the water. Well, as long as the cells don't burst, the toxins remain inside the cells. But inevitably, those cells are going to want to burst and decompose. So if enough of them decompose bursting at the same time, the toxins are released, and that's enough to make people sick. And at that concentration that they've got in that lake in Nebraska, at 1.5 million cyanobacteria cells per milliliter, and 68%, or whatever the number was, I think he said 68%, are toxic. That's enough to kill dogs and hurt people, and make people sick. So what do you do about it? What do you do about it? And I've talked about this in that last episode, but I'm going to hit it again because I think it's real important. And matter of fact, I hope this homeowners association is watching this video in Nebraska. And if they're not watching it live, watch it later. Because here's the problem. When you have a harmful algal bloom like that, and it gets to that density, then you have a liability issue. Not only can it kill dogs and hurt humans, it can also kill the fish. And so what do you do about it? Well, one of the things you do is recognize that you have a problem. And then once you see that you have the problem, you got to do something to fix it. Now, part of the runoff coming off into that 26-acre horseshoe-shaped sand pit lake, part of the problem is it's coming off of ag fields. So that means that the fertilizer count is pretty high. Well, until you stop the point source, then this can be an ongoing problem. But the problem happens because there's an imbalance of nutrients, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus. When those two things are out of balance and the nitrogen is lower than the phosphorus, that this time of year, that's going to give these harmful algal blooms the opportunity to outcompete the healthy plankton, healthy algae that we like. So one of the mitigation methods this time of year is to use an algicide and kill some of it. But you got to work with somebody that knows what they're doing, and you need to understand the consequences. If you kill too much of this stuff and it breaks down and releases its toxins, then you've got a bigger problem. So it needs to be diluted with algicides. And then there's a product that I talked about a couple of weeks ago called Foslock, which is lanthanum mixed with bentonite that is dissolved into the water, and it grabs phosphorus, sequesters it, and then sinks to the bottom. So when that stuff is introduced into the water, it literally acts like a magnet and grabs phosphorus molecules. Now here's the problem. If phosphorus is tied up in that cyanobacteria or that blue-green algae, it won't grab the phosphorus. So the catch-22 is while you've got phosphorus tied up in living organisms, then that Foslock isn't going to do a good enough job typically. So this is something that needs to be done in the fall and winter, or maybe early spring, before cyanobacteria really kicks in gear. And I think you start off by analyzing the water chemistry and then understanding how to read that water chemistry. And there's a number of labs around the nation. The company that produces Foslock does it. You can find them in the resource guide at pondboss.com. Speaking of which, let's take a couple of minutes and talk about some of the resources that you've got out there. You've got pondboss.com, Ask the Boss discussion forum, where you can ask a question and somebody that knows what they're talking about are going to respond to you. And it's a community that's been there since 1998 till we had to upgrade the software 2002. So we've got 19 years worth of questions and answers archived, and they're all valuable. Another thing is Pond Boss Magazine. If I had a magazine, I'd pick it up and show it to you right now. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. You knew that was coming, didn't you, Josie and Wayne? You guys knew that. So other resources you've got are these back videos. Also, the Institute of Higher Pondology. If you want to learn about that, now you're going to pay for that. That's not free. But the information you get from it is way worth more than what you'd spend to receive it. It's premium content. You can find that at pondboss.teachable.com. I think that's it. It's either that or teachable.pondboss.com. There's a link on the Pond Boss website for them. And then you've got this Facebook page with videos archived. Some of these videos, most of them are on YouTube as well. So there's some of your resources. So now I did want to also tackle some other issues. I got let me think about it a minute. Oh, I got a call from a guy last week when I didn't get to do the show, and he was upset because his fish were piping at the surface of the water. Well, come to find out, he had an aeration system of this brand new 8-acre lake, and he was running it on a generator until they got permanent power there. Well, he didn't get to service the generator, and so basically what was happening is the generator was running about 12, 13 hours a day, and that's the amount of aeration he was getting. until he wasn't able to service the generator. Then the generator went down and the aeration system was off for 10 days. Well, at that point, he got full-time electricity, plugged the aeration system in, and then got a 4-inch rain that night. And the pond turned over and his fish were up gasping for air. Now, the good news is he'd filled that lake with well water. So what he did was the lake had stratified in 10 days of heat in north central or west central Mississippi, where this lake is. And what happened was when the lake stratified, it didn't take long for the water below the thermocline to run out of oxygen. So when he kicked on the aeration system, he started regurgitating that anoxic water below the thermocline toward the top, mixed it with 4 inches of rain coming straight down out of the sky, dropped the temperature about 15 degrees, killed all the plankton, and pretty soon you got an oxygen crash going on. So I had him kick on the well, leave the aeration system on, and just, pray for sunny skies for a couple of days to get the plankton going again so he'd have photosynthesis again. So the good news is that he didn't lose very many fish, but he did lose a few. Now, there's been a lot of weird things going on this summer like that. I've gotten several fish kill calls. Matter of fact, Tommy Smith formerly from Hawaii, from Honolulu, Hawaii, who is retired and moved to Georgia, has got a friend down the road that's had a fish kill. I don't know what's going on there yet, but I can pretty well tell you it's going to be related to water quality. So here's your tip for today. Be sure and manage your water quality. Now, if you think you need an aeration system, that's a great idea. Follow the startup protocols, because this time of year, you can kill every fish in your pond by kicking that on and puking up that dead water beneath the thermocline. So be careful with that. I'm going to scroll down there and see if we got some questions here. I see Wyatt checking in, KM Cole. There's Wayne. I see Wayne. Jeremy Duckworth. Dave Weber, 600 bucks. Not too bad of a dumb tax. Bam! Dave Weber, I love you, man. And you know what? I am so thrilled with that. I am absolutely. There's my dumb tax. 600 bucks. Sweet. That's great. I love that. Yeah, my dumb tax. Daniel Hall, my cook, Tony Edwards. Looks like we're going in and out. Looks like drain the tank, new fuel filter, fresh tank of fuel. Everyone at the rear at the repair shop gets a tank of gasoline on Bob. That's exactly what's going on. And I am so happy to buy their gas. I'm telling you. Howard Dittrich, Jeremy Duckworth, Ron Ardwan. Is it too hot to add lime? No, it's not too hot to add lime. Now, here's what you got to do. If you guys are thinking about adding lime, be sure that you add ag lime. Don't add quick lime, calcium hydroxide. Don't add any of the hydrated lime. Don't do that. Add calcium carbonate. What's the name of it? It's ag lime, but dolomitic lime. That's what you want. So if you're going to do it, it's okay to do it now. Most people do it in January, February, because that's when the lime is mostly available. But yeah, you can do it now if you want to, sure. Let's see here. Blair Ulrich. Looks like you guys are getting kicked off and having to come back on, which I don't know why that's going on unless I just don't have a good cell. Let's see. Joe Dupner, Howard Dittrich. You guys, looks like you're getting kicked off. If you guys have questions, throw them at me. There's Chris Blood. Good to see Chris. See what else we got here. I'm going to scroll up here and make sure I'm trying not to miss anything. How much will aeration help in the role of prevention? Hey, Mark, I hope you heard what I talked about. Mark Dyer is the one I was talking about with the harmful algal bloom. Aeration will help a lot. Now, it won't prevent it, and it won't stop it. But what it will do, aeration allows water to move, to be aerated top to bottom, to where it can process organic matter and help rebalance nutrients some. Now, when you have an imbalance of nutrients like nitrogen versus phosphorus, nitrogen is part of the atmosphere. So some nitrogen can actually dissolve into the water, but if they're depending on the input, you may not be able to mitigate the imbalance of nutrients because of the heavy load of phosphorus compared to how much nitrogen water can absorb from the atmosphere. Now, that's a little complicated water chemistry to talk about, but here's your answer. Aeration will help a lot because it will help the good algae not lose its position to the harmful algae. Once blue-green algae gains a foothold, not only does it outcompete the good algae that we want, it also creates its own environment where it thrives. It changes the pH of the water. It can alter the temperature of the water in its photic zone where that stuff is growing and completely block out. It can change the balance of the nutrient load by what it absorbs and what it uses. So aeration can help a lot in the prevention of it. It's not going to help you mitigate it a whole lot when you have it. But I'm going to tell you this. If you can keep the water happy, then you're going to have a great, might not help stop the problem. So there's the answer, but aeration would be huge. Okay. I see Justin Schenck, DeAndre Kimbrough. Yep, everybody keeps getting kicked off. Looks like I hate that. I'm going to have to figure that out. Danny Mac getting 20 pounds of Green Clean, oxygen-based. Green Clean is a hydrogen peroxide deal. So I had to work today, my leftovers, and 40 pounds of Phos Clear, which is buffered alum. Okay, so what that tells me is Danny Mac has been studying some mitigation prospects for dealing with blue-green algae, and what the Green Clean does is that is a hydrogen peroxide that kills algal blooms. It can kill harmful algal blooms. And then the Phos Clear, the buffered alum, what that does is aluminum sulfate buffered will not change the pH of the water, but it too will act like Phoslock does, and it'll grab those excess phosphorus ions or phosphate ions and force them to settle out and sequester in the mud in the bottom of the pond. And in Danny Mac's pond, I think the bottom of it is gravel, which is even better. So there you go. Howard Dittrich, my lakes in North Florida are built on old limestone quarry, and they sell dolomite from the surrounding areas. Is that why I have monster bass in all three lakes? That's a big reason. Because when you have lime, well, there we go. We reconnected, which I'm going to drive a little bit and see if I can find a better connection. I'm on a country road, so you guys bear with me a minute. I'm going to go see if I can find another place. This is kind of irritating. I love being out in the country with the family, but it sure don't make it easy to be able to have a good connection, to be able to talk to everybody. So I'm going to pull up the road a little bit, see if we can get a little bit better connection. So while we're going, I want to talk about Howard's question about having plenty of difference on how productive that water is. Productive means, to me, productive means that it can grow stuff. You know, productive to an angler means you can catch fish. But productive to me means that you can have a good plankton bloom, which means good bait fish, which means good, threadfin shad. And in Florida, where those phosphate pits and lime pits are, you've got some really, really highly productive waters and the right temperatures to have diversity of the food chain. So I'm going to hold this little tripod and hope it doesn't fall while I go find a hill. So you guys hang in there with me. Going back to the water thing, Howard's talking about it. Mark Dyer, we're going to talk about that. The more you guys can understand the way water works, the greater the odds are that you can have a real successful fishery and a successful lake. And the sad part about it is water doesn't have to be, the water quality only has to deteriorate for maybe 30 minutes and kill every fish in it. That's the sad part. A while ago when our buddy said, hey, it's $1,500, don't ask me how I know. Well, don't ask me how I know that it takes 30 minutes for fish to die. The fisheries business and not kill fish from time to time, and I've done that way more times than I want to talk about, in my own ponds, fish farm ponds, stuff like that, when I was doing more of that. But, so drilling back into the concept of happy water, you got to have water that's happy. If it's happy 24 hours a day, that's great. That's what you want. If it's happy 23 and a half hours a day, that's not so great. How do you know? How do you know? The way you know is that the oxygen levels stay up. The clarity is predictable. It doesn't get, too turbid. I'm going to pull right up here, folks, and I'm going to turn around and see if this, because this ought to be a little bit better cell right here. I'm going to know here in just a minute. Y'all bear with me a minute. I should have looked at my dadgum cell coverage a little bit better, but this brand new grandbaby just got home about 2 hours ago, and we've been being grandparents. So I'm going to park right here. Here we go. I think this might work. Okay, so Howard, that's, in my opinion, you've got a combination of happy water with, and here's part of what makes water happy. When the alkalinity is something above 40 parts per million, in your case, it's probably more like 200, then it's got the buffering capacity for the pH not to shift, for acid not to take over from carbonic acid, from carbon dioxide, metabolizing or respiring through photosynthesis and all the little chemical things that are going on. So you've got rolaids in it. The other thing is visibility. This time of year, I'd like to be 18 to 24 inches, because that way you're not seeing spikes in the water chemistry. Spikes meaning pH going up and down from influences of metabolism of plants and algae that live in the water. So happy water is a big deal. In Florida, food chain's a big deal because you have a longer growing season. So threadfin shad, golden shiners, bluegills, red ear sunfish, they call them shell crackers over there. Fish like that, that's the food chain. It takes 10 pounds of bait fish to grow a pound of bass. So as long as you've got the right kind of food chain, you're going to have successful fisheries stuff. So there's several things going on there. Throw in the fact you got genetics, that's good. All right, let me see here. Justin Shanks asking the question about Phosclear. Phosclear will grab suspended colloidal clay, but it's designed more to grab dissolved phosphorus in the water. And Danny Mac, you know what, he's going to address that. James Allen, 80-acre lake, tried the Smartfish app and found the relative scale for bass range between 85 and 115. That's a big range. Notice Setchi disc at 0.6 meters. Thoughts? Yep, 0.6 meters. That's going to be, let's see, that's going to be about 2 feet. So that's going to be 24 inches, 20 to 24 inches. Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. When you see bass that range between 85 and 115 on the relative weight scale, that means that the food chain for those fish that are in the 115 class is outstanding. Now, what you're not telling me there is what are the lengths of those fish. Now, if all those fish there are 10 to 14 inches long, that means that you've got some fish that are being completely outcompeted for a food chain that's about to disappear. So any of those fish that are under 95 in a lake that's got fish that are 115, any fish that are under 95, I'd be real tempted to remove those fish because odds are high that they can't recover from that big of a gap. A fish at 85% of its relative weight or 85% from what standard weight should be, it's like a 12-inch bass weighing 8 ounces, 9 ounces. It's more like, 12-inch bass weighing 9 ounces. Odds are that it's not going to make up, 15 to 20% of its weight because it's lost too much. So what that scale means to me is either you've got 2 size classes or 3 size classes, and the ones that are ranging in that 85 to 95 size class are going to be those fish that are overcrowded for their food chain. Those need to be harvested. Setchi disc at 0.6 meters, that's 22 inches, 24 inches. I'm okay with that this time of year. If it's less than that, if it was 16, 18 inches, I say let's start talking about the density of that bloom. Let's see, Danny Mac, my large bluegill is showing some red cysts near their tails. That is a consequence. This time of year, what happens is they're a vector. They're a host for yellow grubs. So what happens is snails are the primary host of yellow grubs. In the springtime, the little larval grubs break loose from the snails and they're free swimming in the water. They'll attach to a fish, burrow under its scales, typically near a fin, and then go in right under the skin and bury into the flesh and turn into a little cyst. And then when they emerge this time of year, They leave a little red bump on the fish. Some people call it red sores disease. Now, Danny Mac, I'll tell you this. If you watch those big bluegill and it looks like they're forming some bruises, if you start seeing some, when they come up to feed, if you start seeing some red spots about half as big as a dime, then medicate your feed. And what that means is that those little bumps are getting infected with the bacteria, which could create issues further down the road. You know, the good news is they can heal pretty fast. And I've talked about medicating feed before. So let me see here. Let's see what else we got. Ron, are standard weights typically lower during mid to late summer because bass may be lethargic due to elevated temps? That's a great question. Ron, I'm so proud of you, dude. You're really kicking this fishery stuff in gear. Ron he has been such an ardent student of this fishery stuff and water and all the whole pond management stuff. That is a question that is a very thoughtful question that deserves a thoughtful answer. So I'm going to think about it. Okay. So what happens is standard weights are typically lower this time of year for a couple of reasons. We're still post-spawn. The fish are recovering from that. The food chain is not peaked out yet, which right now ponds have got quite a bit of vegetation where the baby bait fish are hanging out. So they're lethargic a little bit due to elevated temperatures because they don't eat much. They're a lot more concerned about not dying when the temperature's hot. So they're going to not necessarily feed as much. They're probably... Well, it did it again. My bad. It kind of fits in with the week, except for the birth of a grandchild. So yes, it is somewhat, it due in part to elevated temperatures, but also coming off the spring, and we don't have as much food as we're going to have in the next 6 or 8 weeks. Let me see what else we got here. Looks like everybody's getting kicked off. I hate it. Yep. Good to see you. There's Drew. Hey, good to see Drew. Ryan Triple. Guys, I'm so sorry y'all are having to coming off and coming back on. I see Trevor Shotvet looking. Good to see him. Let me see if there's any more questions. Yep. Mike Cook. Okay. Wayne said, sorry I'm late. Please start over. Yeah, I need to. Okay. All right. I'm trying to look for questions because I'm going to wrap this up because we got such a poor connection. Hey, Weber, so will adding a bunch of limestone rocks for habitat when constructing a new pond help maintain happy water? Absolutely, yes, it will. If you can use limestone rocks that are, say, as big as from baseballs to softballs or even volleyballs, rip size, and put them in piles shaped like a pyramid, that can sure help. They'll dissolve into the water slowly over a long period of time. They provide substrate for periphyton to grow on, which helps mitigate the water chemistry changing. It helps cleanse the water. So there's nothing bad there's everything good about piling limestone in water. Now, I would typically put it in water 5 to 10 feet deep and make those piles 3 to 6 feet tall. So the answer to that's absolutely yes. Okay, I'm going to keep looking here. No volume on the phone. Oh, Lord, maybe I had the volume down too low. I don't know. If I did, sorry, I didn't think about it. Okay, Savannah Downing. Is the relative weight of a bass less concerning to be in the mid to lower 80s this time of year versus in the fall? Let's see, when they feed more heavily, most of what I catch is in that size range. No, if a bass is in the 80s now, it's deteriorated to the point that it's going to spend way too much energy to catch up with not enough time to grow large. So it's a sure sign that those bass are overcrowded for that food chain. So I'm going to tell you, it would be smarter to be culling some of those bass now, pulling them out of the food chain, so the remaining fish can participate in the food chain this fall as the food chain gets more substantial. Trevor Fry tried to fertilize his lake with a water-soluble fertilizer. Didn't work. Alkalinity's 30 parts per million. What could be the problem? The problem there, Trevor, is the alkalinity is a little bit too low. And I know you're trying to get your lake limed, and I know it's been a little bit of a headache for them to get there, which I'm hoping, I'm not in that loop, but I know the backstory, what's going on with you, your backstory anyway. So that's the problem is let's put it this way, the lime or the alkalinity is one of the backbones to build the skeletal parts of cellular structure. So it would be like making a chicken pot pie without any chicken. Then it's just a pie, So I don't know where I came up with that, but the problem is the alkalinity's got to be a little bit higher than that. Minimum is 40, but it would be easier to get a bloom. And there's an amber alert. And so it would be easier to get a bloom if your alkalinity was up closer to 100. So yes, the problem is your alkalinity is too low to kick in a good bloom. And what's crazy is if you fertilize the lake and that fertilizer is dissolved in the water, the minute that lime hits the water, you're going to get a bloom. So be on point for that. I know you're in Louisiana, so whenever they do get over there and lime your lake, be on point for that. As a matter of fact, Trevor, I'm tempted to tell you that here we are in August and you fertilize the lake. I'd be tempted to tell them to fertilize that lake like in November, December, January, February now. Because I'm a little bit worried now that it's gone on this long that you may create an issue if you get a heavy plankton bloom because the alkalinity goes up really, really fast. So we might need to have a conversation about that. I do want to take a minute and talk and say thank you to our Mark Dauber, good signal here, but occasional drop delay. It's going on here, I promise. I'm in a spot where my cell signal is not very good. All right, I want to scroll up here and see what we got. Mike McPherson from Indiana, back surgery. I'm glad you woke up to catch the show too, buddy. Hang in there. All right, see Jimmy Mitchell. Okay, I do want to take a minute and thank Texas Hunter Products for being a sponsor for this show. Even though the quality of my show tonight, broadcast quality, is not that good. I will figure that out. I won't be sitting where I am here next Wednesday night. We'll be doing it somewhere else where we have a good sell, maybe having barbecue or something. So I do want to thank Texas Hunter for their sponsorship. Same with Purina Mills. I love working with those guys. I know they have hiccups in their production sometimes and distribution sometimes, but I go to bat for them because I love their product, and they've got the product that can grow huge fish. And David Schneiderman, Easy Docks, thank you for sponsoring this show as well, my brother. It's a good time. It's a good time to be killing cattails. Right now is the perfect time to be killing cattails. You want to kill them before the leaves begin to go dormant. So I'm going to tell you right now is a spectacular time to kill cattails. Now I'm going to give you a little secret that you're not going to read on any label or hear from any applicator. Depending on the product you use, and I was always used to using glyphosate, rodeo, and the aquatic surfactant that goes with it. But mix it exactly like the label says, and when you spray those cattails, mist the chemical on it. Don't soak it. If you soak the leaf, you're going to burn the leaf, cut off the vesicles. The chemical won't translocate down to the tuber and kill the plant. But if you'll mist it on there to where the surfactant can cut through the wax of that leaf and allow the glyphosate to hit it and go down to the roots, you stand a better chance of killing it. Now, here's the caveat to that. I stopped killing plants about 15 years ago. I hired people to do that in my company because it wasn't fun, that I wasn't going to do it. So I hired it done, and I know if Kelly Duffy's watching this show, which he watches quite a bit, Kelly is well attuned to the newest products, some of which are designed for cattails. So I'm going to tell you there's something else that you can use, and I would do a little more due diligence on that. Actually go to aquaplant.tamu.edu. Yeah, go to the Aquaplant website, look up cattails. It's going to tell you the different herbicides you can use. All right, I'm going to try to wrap this up here. Is barn lime at Tractor Supply good to use or not? Read the label, Mike. See what kind of lime it is. If it's calcium carbonate or dolomitic lime, it's good to use. If it's not, if it's hydrated lime or, quick lime, any of those, not good to use. That will kill your pH and in turn make your water unhappy. All right, I'm going to keep going down through here. Will water depth ever kill cattails? No, they really don't. I was amazed. I think the first time I saw cattails in deep water was in the 80s. I went up to the panhandle of Texas, and I thought I was going to wade out and pull a few cattails out and just look at their tubers. And I stepped off the shore of that pond where cattails were about 8 feet tall, and I'm 6'2", and when I stepped on the shore, they were 2 feet taller than me. And when I stepped into the water, I figured out I was standing in a gravel pit. And what happened was I went down over my head. Those cattails were growing in water over 8 feet deep. They were 16 feet tall. Now, I've never seen it since. I've seen it in that part of the planet, but I have seen cattails growing in water as deep as 5 feet deep. So I haven't seen where you can really starve them out because by adding the water on top of them. I'm not seeing that. Let's see here what else we got here. Okay, I think I'm caught up on the questions. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping it up because we got a bad connection. And I want to go hold a grandbaby that I haven't held yet. So you guys can email me at info@pondboss.com and hit me with some questions. I'll be happy to answer them. I'm going to be hunkered down for a couple of days as they repair my truck. And then I'm going to be bouncing around the country a little bit. I'll let you know where all I'm going. I'm going to go take a look at a lake in Arkansas. And I may run up to Iowa and take a look at a lake up there that a guy's building. And then I'll have some more topics to talk about. Our home remodel's coming along. Trevor is watching the show. He and his dad are doing the majority of the work at our home in Granbury. We're excited for that to be coming along pretty good. Debbie's pretty pumped up about it. She's going to be there, I think, Friday to meet another contractor about wiring and things like that. Stereo systems and internet and all that kind of stuff. So, I do appreciate you guys watching this show. I apologize for the connection. I'll think through that a little bit better next week and be in a better spot. So, until then, I do appreciate every minute I get to spend with you guys. I'm going to go hug her grandbaby and get to know her a little bit. Her name is Charlotte. So, until next week, adios.